Mind Body Studio is for anyone who wants to reach their full potential, thrive, and create a life filled with vitality.
Each week, we'll bring you our expertise, giggles, and a splash of quirky to explore real and relevant topics to help you along your life's journey. Each episode is based around life experiences that we encounter daily in our professional clinics with clients.
Our discussions are based on the many ups and downs of life's journey and the full human experience. We'll bring you science, psychology, and practicality to real-life issues. We'll connect with you and hopefully make you laugh and inspire you to evolve.
So, thanks for listening. We know you're going to love it. Hi, Kalí. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Trace?
I'm doing awesome. No, that's a lie. I'm not doing awesome, as you can hear.
You're a bit nasal, aren't you?
I am a bit nasal today.
What's going on?
Oh, I've just got a little bit of a cold. I think I can thank Charlotte for that. She tends to bring home things from school.
That's so lovely that you're blaming your cute little child.
But it's true, right? They bring home everything. Like everything. So, based on that, today we're going to talk about, are we supposed to be happy all the time?
What an interesting topic.
It is, right? Do you think that there's an expectation out there that we should be happy all the time?
Absolutely, 100%, especially with social media. But before we dive into that, I want to touch on what is happiness.
That's a really great question. And don't you reckon that depends on the individual?
Absolutely.
Because happiness means something different to every single person. Where we fall down is comparing ourselves to others and what other people have, or what we don't have and they have, or what jobs they have and we don't have, what money they have and we don't have. All those comparisons are the things that possibly cause us unhappiness, don't you think?
I think that is definitely a component of it. And also the fact that we are told that if you do X, Y, Z, you will be happy. And a lot of the time it's conditional happiness when you get married, when you get the job, when you lose weight, when you achieve this or that. So understanding and having a really personal idea of what happiness is to you would be the first recommendation. You need to know who you are. You need to know what are the things that bring you joy and how much of your life represents those things. How much time are you dedicating to those things rather than looking at other people's lives and assuming that they are happy because of a picture or a situation, and then comparing and going into that lack mentality that I don't have this or someone else's life is much better.
So I guess that's on my notes today, is that does society tell us to be happy all the time? And why is that?
I think we do get told to be happy all the time. We do get told to, toughen up and just kind of get on with it. And human nature is so interesting and so simple and yet so complex at the same time that we have this tendency to repress, avoid, or even ignore and distract ourselves from situations that bring us any kind of discomfort. So if you're feeling a bit sad, if you're feeling a bit frustrated or angry or lonely or unhappy, it was like, come on, just forget about it, come out, have a drink. Or, people use social situations, they use food, they use substances, they use sex, they use so many things to kind of fill those gaps of unhappiness that we're not really well equipped to just sit with the discomfort that life brings us, which is an absolutely natural part of life.
And I think you've touched on something really good there in that, Kalí's doing a little dance
I am not.
It's true. She is. She's standing and doing a little dance while I'm trying to talk. So, and I'm sitting. So you can see why I'm having a little giggle to myself.
Trying to make you happy.
Look, when we're in this whole holistic human experience, we have to recognize that as part of that experience, there is going to be pain, there's going to be suffering, there's going to be trauma and anger. And although these are undesirable emotions and experiences to have, they're actually they have a valid presence in our holistic overall journey, right?
Absolutely. And I think when we begin to allow ourselves to feel these things and we surrender to the sensation of it, and we can find a way of sitting in comfort with that discomfort, we can learn so much, so many amazing ideas and programs around the world and projects have, been birthed from a place of discomfort. This is where people come together. This is where you hit rock bottom and you go, I've had it enough. I will absolutely do something to change my circumstances. This is where sometimes people find a sense of appreciation and gratitude for what they have. So there are so many gifts that are hidden when we are sitting in the eye of the storm, and it's important to allow ourselves time to actually experience that sensation and not just immediately avoid it or repress it or distract ourselves from it. Because as we know, an emotion and a state like unhappiness, it's energy. And if it doesn't move through the body, if it doesn't get expressed, it will come out and bite you in the rear in a really nasty way later on. And that may be in the form of lashing out at someone or a panic attack or something. It's energy. So we need to find ways of becoming more comfortable in ourselves and the experiences that we are having.
So do you think that unhappiness in general is developed from people, I guess, being a little bit too ambitious and chasing after things that they think are going to make them happy?
Look, that's a really good question, and I'm not entirely sure if it's just about ambition and chasing things that might not be right for you. I think there are lots and lots of reasons. I mean, there are people out there that are having absolutely awful situations in their lives, and it's very difficult to be happy. And on the flip side, there are people out that are in really, really unfortunate situations that are some of the happiest people that I actually know. So during my time when I was doing all of this volunteer work in Cambodia and Nepal, I met some of the happiest, most generous, loving people in situations that in our privileged Western world we would consider like absolutely horrendous. So I think the attitude that you bring to any situation is so incredibly important. But also when we're looking at what makes us happy and what doesn't make us happy, we need to understand who we are. We need to understand what we stand for, what our value systems are, what rocks our world, what brings me joy. I love, being in nature. Everyone that knows me knows that my happy place is the ocean. But I also love being on my own, reading an amazing book with a hot cup of coffee on a rainy night. So understanding what we love and making time to engage in those practices allows us to live a life that is more aligned to who we are and what we stand for.
And I just want to add there that when we're looking at happiness and sadness, so positive emotions and negative emotions, we know that there's an equilibrium there, right? Everything is always temporary. Mm-hmm. Like nothing is ever going to last forever. We know that happiness isn't going to be there forever. We know that sadness isn't going to be there forever. So happiness will pass just as easy or just as fluidly as what sadness does. And so what I see a lot of is people pushing down those negative emotions because they're really, really scared of them. They don't want to face, they don't want to look inwards that it's a very unpleasant sensation having negative emotions and negative physical responses come up and things like that. So a lot of people push down that emotion, and that's what leads to, stagnation in our systems. Okay, so when we're having a negative response, it's actually our body touching base with us and communicating with us, and we need to listen to that. So it's okay to have a negative response to something, as long as you're actually taking notice of that negative response and giving it some time and giving it some value and asking yourself, that's interesting. Why is that actually coming up for me today? Like, what's actually happening, within me that's making me have that negative emotion or that negative response to something? Why am I being triggered? Why am I not feeling as positive as what I might have done yesterday? And sometimes it doesn't really matter. It's great to sometimes be sad and get it all out. What we don't want to happen is to push those emotions down. We want to get them out, and we want to get them out into the universe so that we can take back in all the positive energy as well. So do you think it's okay for people to sit and be uncomfortable with those negative emotions from a psychological perspective?
Not only do I think it's okay, I think it's healthy. So there is a difference for our listeners out there. There is a difference between sitting with intention with those emotions and then going into dwelling, right? So whenever I speak to any of the people that I'm working with, and we're trying to, get into techniques of processing emotions, I suggest that people put a timer on. Like maybe 10 minutes is enough for you to just feel, and you can maybe do a body scan. Where in my body am I holding that sadness? And put, a hand on that part of your body. Do some deep breathing and really just allow yourself to imagine that these are parts of you that you carry within you, almost like, a small child inside that's holding that sadness. And self-soothing, acknowledging and putting the attention and the energy in there is a really beautiful practice. It's gentle, it's calming, it's self-assuring, and it allows you to start to create a relationship with yourself that allows you to feel a little bit safer with this uncomfortable sensation, allowing you to sit in that discomfort. And if you know that you're only going to do this for 10 minutes, there's an end. So something really magical begins to happen. It's sort of like the brain goes, okay, well, I know this energy is going to have attention, so I don't need to be like a pressure cooker that's never letting off steam and I'm going to explode, right? So it's sort of like, and sometimes you can just sit there and have a cry or journal, write about what you're experiencing, what kind of thoughts, how are you being triggered. But it's so incredibly important and healthy to feel those sensations and have the ability to hold space for yourself, because when you do that, it's sort of like having a really good cry.
Yeah.
You feel this physical sense of relief.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's that sensation of, I've let something go. I feel like there's been pressure building and I've identified with it and I've let it go. Yeah. And after that, whenever you do any exercise that allows you to sit with yourself in a space that might not be entirely loving or happy or joyful or calming, and you might feel a little bit triggered, it's always a really good idea to do something really nourishing afterwards. And it can be nourishing either socially with someone that you love, or nourishing physically, like having a really nice warm cup of tea, having nourishing food, or having a shower, going for a gentle walk. It's always really important to follow through with something that is going to top us up.
Let's get a little bit technical for a second, because I want to talk about brain waves. So we know as scientists that there's 5 different types of brain waves. We've got alpha, beta, delta, gamma, and theta brain waves, right? Which ones do we want to stay in? We want to stay in the alpha brain waves and we want to stay in the theta brain waves, because the theta brain waves is what releases some GABA, and GABA is our feel-good hormone. So we want to have lots of that. The best way to get more GABA is to have the deep relaxation, like you just mentioned, do some meditation and do some self-care. So we want to be working in those brain waves. Once we start getting into beta and we start getting crazy and turning our thoughts over and over and over again, that's when we start running in those beta brain waves. And too much of that, not good for the brain. So tell us a little bit that from your psychology of the brain, how people can kind of get and stay in the alpha and the theta a bit more.
So for our listeners, the importance of brain waves is that when you begin to slow down the brain, the central nervous system begins to slow down as well. So you begin to access that more calm, relaxed, safe space. And this is where a lot of the magic happens. When we live in a heightened state, the central nervous system is overly aroused. And so we are more defensive, more irritable, more stressed and more anxious, more in that fear mode. So super important for you to check in with yourself on a regular basis throughout the day, not just daily, but throughout the day. And deep breathing is a beautiful way of getting into that relaxed alpha state, right? And
do you just like, hey brain, like, are you in alpha right now or are you in beta? Is that?
I don't know how you do it, Trace, but if that's how you want to yeah, show our listeners how to do it.
Hey Alpha, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Get in there. Yeah.
But let's get back on track. I think that the cold and flu tablets are affecting your brain waves.
Probably.
I think so. So, well, the listeners out there know that I specialize in hypnosis. And one of the reasons why I specialize in hypnosis is because we are primarily working in theta brainwave. And theta brainwave is just the most magical, most transformational brainwave that we can go into. And, I have a whole bunch of hypnotic meditations on my website that are specifically designed to get people into that very, very deep state of relaxation. And what begins to happen when we are in that really deep, relaxed state, we're more susceptible to accepting and implementing and integrating the changes and the suggestions that we are being given, which is why hypnosis works so well, because when you are in that really deep relaxed state, you don't have the critical analytical mind playing an active role. And so you just begin to really absorb the information that is being given to you. So I generally run my patients through a process of emotional cleansing where through deep relaxation, through specific use of words and imagery and sensations, we are releasing all of these emotions. So this is processing. So this is the difference between dwelling and processing with the intention. So if I'm feeling particularly sad, and this sadness is there from the moment I wake up, during this hypnotic meditation experience, I might get the person to imagine that, with each and every breath, they're releasing this like murky colored mist that comes out of their pores that represents that sadness that is overbearing and overwhelming. And through this really gentle but powerful technique, you allow the brain to find ways of processing these emotions. And then at the same time, we go into that beautiful space where we begin to create what it is that is your ideal. This is why happiness is so important. You need to know what makes you happy so that when you go into a therapeutic space, you go in there with a roadmap. You kind of say to the therapist, I want to feel this way because this gives me joy. And that sense of joy makes me feel more resilient, more connected, more present. And that ends up in me feeling happy.
I love it. That's really great. So I'm going to go back to the question that we asked. That is the title of today's talk, is that are we supposed to be happy all the time? And what is your answer? Yes or no?
I think that's a really personal question and a really personal answer, I guess. Some people are naturally happy all the time.
Yeah.
And
I don't know anyone like that.
And that's okay.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
I think the most important thing is to be genuine.
Yes.
If you are genuinely happy in situations where most people are miserable and that is your genuine state, by all means, be that all the time.
But on the flip side, like if you are feeling miserable, I say just go ahead and be miserable. Like, let those feelings and emotions come up, deal with them, process them. And if there's something that isn't manageable, then you know what you need to do. You need to go and seek extra support. But if they are, just sit with the uncomfortable feeling of these emotions that are coming up for you and just go with it. I say just let go. And
with a timer.
Hey, yeah.
With a timer.
With a timer, yes. We don't want to sit in that for too long.
You don't want to dwell.
But we do want to be able to go, okay, these aren't emotions that are positive. These aren't emotions that are going to have a great impact on me from a biochemical perspective, a physical perspective, an emotive perspective. But I'm going to sit with them and I'm going to see where they're coming from and what's actually going on, so that then I can start processing the things I might need to change down the track so that I don't have these emotions coming up again. Because what we want to do is break cycles too. We don't want someone to be sitting in a miserable space for so long on a particular topic and have that come up again and again and again. We actually want to work through that. We want to break the cycle. We want to see what's going on so that that person can heal and then they can move forward as well.
Absolutely. So going back to the question, you don't have to be happy all the time. I think it's perfectly okay to acknowledge that we have different range of emotions, and those emotions are going to be dependent on our mood, dependent on what's going on in our lives. And some people fluctuate a lot during the day, some people fluctuate a lot during the week. The most important thing is what states are most conducive to me being more productive, more present, more loving, more healthy, and allowing yourself to have the conscious dedication and intention to doing the things that help you activate those sensations. And when you hit a day when nothing's going right and you're feeling really grumpy and you're not feeling great, allowing yourself to go, well, this is just part of the experience, and ride the wave. Yeah. You know, the sun's not always shining. We have different, we have different seasons, we have different temperatures, and sometimes when the sun is shining too brightly, it's really bloody annoying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at me. I mean, I've been pretty healthy and cruising along with no illness or anything for such a long time now. And then all of a sudden I got a cold this morning. It's like, there's got to be an equilibrium, right? Mm-hmm. You've got to have everything in balance. And that means there's positive and negatives to this whole experience. So yes, there's going to be really hard times, but there's also going to be really good times too. And that's the thing that we need to remember, is that happiness is only temporary, sadness is only temporary as well. And everything works in equilibrium with itself. So let's give people some actions. So on the days that you're feeling a little bit flat, how can we generate a little bit more happiness into our life, do you think? I mean, for me, look, the number one thing I think about, well, actually there's two things that I think about when I think about generating more happiness. It's one, getting a proper night's sleep, okay, because that's so crucial to your body. Making sure that you get that 7 to 9 hours of undisturbed sleep every single night is crucial to your body. It's the time when you're cleansing your cells, you're getting rid of all of the debris from the body, you're renewing and repairing and building muscle and building tissue. All of those things are super important. So if you're waking up in the morning and you're completely exhausted, there's something going on with your sleep. You've got some stagnation going on somewhere in some of those systems and they're not working properly. So that's something we definitely got to look at. The second thing to building happiness is through the gut health. So I know that we don't want to talk too much about gut health in depth today, but looking at what we eat, because if we're jamming a whole heap of chemicals and processed food into our bodies, it's not really going to have a positive outcome for us. We're causing a lot of stagnation in our systems. So we want to go back to basics. We want to go back to whole foods, really good nourishing foods that are going to nourish our body and feed our gut microbiome as best as possible, because we want them to be super, super, super happy. We want them to be like little beings in there going, woohoo, she's giving me some awesome, great food again. Not, oh, look at all of the toxic crap coming down. Like, how are we going to process this today? Oh, I'm going to wake up so tired in the morning. That's basically what's going to happen, is that the gut microbiome just can't cope with all of those toxins that are coming through the system. And you're going to wake up feeling exhausted the next day. So we want to feed it really good, healthy, whole foods, nourishing foods, things that nourish your soul. Go back to those comfort foods that you had when you were a kid, that your mum or dad or parents or aunties or uncles or families used to prepare for you. You know, we know, like for me, this is, my mum used to cook savoury mince and rice, like that was my thing, you know. And so that's kind of like my comfort food is I go back to the basics and I cook myself that, and my hubby hates it because he hates the smell, but it stinks out the whole house. But I cook that, and that's what brings me that comfort and that joy and makes me happy because I'm having that meal that's kind of linked to happy memories of my childhood. So what are your thoughts on all of that?
I love that because so many of the chemicals associated to having a healthy, boosted and positive mood are created in the gut. On the flip side, from a psychological perspective, it doesn't matter if you're eating all of this beautiful organic stuff and thinking horrible thoughts. As one of my beautiful mentors, I'm going to call him, he doesn't even know me personally, but I'm going to call him a mentor because I have followed his work so religiously for the last few decades. Dr. Joe Dispenza often says, you know, you're just going to be making organic crap if you're having crappy thoughts.
Yeah.
So having a really strong mindset and understanding what gets you into a happy mood is really important. So for some people that might be putting on a happy song in the morning and just having a boogie. Like, you do not leave the house unless you've had a little bit of a boogie and a dance. And I absolutely love music. I grew up with happy music. And I love dancing and moving and being silly and not taking myself too seriously, because sometimes I do have to be a little bit more serious. And I love how music can just shift us into that sensation. And the other thing for me, this is where I really urge people to figure out what makes you happy, because, you know, Tracey and I are talking about the things that we feel that make us happy, but this is a very personal thing. I absolutely agree that sleep and good nutrition are absolutely essential, 100%. If I don't sleep, you know, I'm not the nicest person to be in my own skin. Hopefully I don't take it out on people, but maybe I do. And being in nature, I find that sensation of being connected to natural spaces, how your energy gets balanced when you are in a space like the ocean or walking barefoot in a national park or something like that, allows us to really feel that sense of connectedness to nature, to the energy of the universe. And this allows us to sort of think that we are bigger than just what's in our heads. And that's one of the things that I absolutely adore. I talk a lot about this in my book, about the healing powers of nature. And there's so much research on it. And I absolutely adore it because, for example, this morning I did not have a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
And I wasn't grumpy, but I was feeling a little bit off just because my night had been interrupted. And off I go driving to the beach for my morning swim, and it's getting colder and colder, and I jumped in the water, and oftentimes I go with friends, and I jumped in the water with my girlfriend, and it was absolutely freezing, like you gasp for air. And then you're silly. I got slapped by a few waves this morning as well. And then I came out and I just felt a million times better. It was like someone had pressed the reset button. And I was happy. I saw people that I really liked. And I was in awe of nature. The sun starts coming out. You feel alive. So it totally shifted my mood.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel that same way, not just in nature, but also in a sauna. Mm-hmm. So like whether flip side to that, cryotherapy. So whether I'm doing like cold therapy or whether I'm in a sauna and then plunge myself into like a cold pool or a cold shower. Yeah, I'm just so invigorated.
It's amazing.
Like, it's so amazing. It's like resetting your whole body. Your whole body just goes, oh, hello. Like, what just happened? I just rebooted. It's like shutting down and then restarting your whole body. And you're like, wow, I feel really energized and I'm like ready to tackle the day. And this is amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I totally agree with you. And I love connecting with nature. You know, I love going in the ocean. I talk about the ocean a lot because it's so important for us to connect with nature. We are not synthetic creatures, beings.
We're part of it.
We are all part of the whole
system.
We need to connect with nature. Nature should be our go-to. It should always be our go-to to ground ourselves and connect with nature, because we are not synthetic beings. We're not created from a synthetic place. We are part of the natural world. And I think sometimes that gets a little bit skew-whiffed, the way that we surround ourselves with a lot of synthetic things, a lot of artificial type environments. We're not actually placing ourselves in a natural environment. And so we're not having the opportunity to take in all of that natural, happy, positive energy that nature actually provides. We're actually surrounding ourselves with, concrete walls and carpet and chairs. I'm looking around my office and I'm like, look at this. I mean, I have lots of plants in my office and I actually talk to my plants. But we need to go out into the forest. We need to hike. We need to go into the ocean. We need to do all these things so that we're really connecting with the environment around us. Super important. Okay.
The other thing that I really want to touch on before we wrap it up for today is making a conscious effort of creating a life where you are surrounded by people that love and support you. That is a massive, we are social creatures, right? So as much as you and I love being in the ocean, pretending we're mermaids, and, things like reading a book and dancing, we are social creatures and we do have to engage with other people. So making a little bit of an assessment and evaluating your life and figuring out who am I spending my time with and how do I feel when I walk away from that interaction. And I know that a lot of people might feel like that, if they walk away from long friendships or relationships, they're betraying someone or they're going to be riddled with guilt. But I want people to really start to take conscious intention in how they create their lives, because you end up being a product. That sense of happiness is also a product of everything that you do every single day that leads you to kind of getting to the weekend and go, wow, I saw people that I really love. I feel inspired by the people that I'm surrounded with. I feel uplifted. I feel supported. And if you don't have any of those people in your life that do that for you, really have a long, hard think about how you can begin to engage in activities that will put you in situations where you will meet new people that are more uplifting, because we all, at the end of the day, feed off each other's energies. So one of the reasons why I drive to the beach every single morning, whether it's stormy, whether it's sunny, and I go there, is because I want to feel my best. But I know that given my day is going to unfold and I might come across 10 or 15 people, and I want to bring my best energy to those interactions. So I want to top up my little batteries with the happiness and that sense of being supported by nature, so that I can then support the rest of the people that I come across. So then you start having this beautiful ripple effect.
Oh, I totally agree with you. It's definitely a big part of it is who we surround ourselves with. Because if we're surrounding ourselves with negativity and toxic energy, it is going to start affecting us from a biochemical perspective, 100%. It changes the brainwaves. It changes the way that we actually respond to things. So from a biological perspective as well, we're not just having an emotive reaction to being around these, but we're actually have these people, but we're having a biochemical response as well. And we're actually increasing these, undesirable chemicals in the body that we don't want to be there. So we're not saying to you, go out now and end all your friendships. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is have a look inward and see, who am I and what do I really need from this life journey? And are there other places that I could go to meet like-minded people that would also add to my bucket, would add to my happiness? So it doesn't mean you necessarily have to get rid of everyone and that's it, I'm never going to talk to you again, blah, blah, blah. Because let's face it, we do have friends in our life, but we evolve as people. And the dynamic changes, and that's okay as well. It's not a failure on anyone's part if a relationship comes to an end. Sometimes people just change paths. They go in different directions. They evolve into different places than the other person. And so it's important for us to find like-minded people, because they are out there, that share the same values and the same beliefs or the same quirky ideas, because, you know, lots of us are a little bit quirky, that we have. And embrace those opportunities and embrace those new friendships and those new circles, because even those might only be temporary as well. So you might come into that, and I guess I think of it as a flow in and flow out effect, is that you might flow into something and go, oh wow, this is amazing. And you might learn something from that, but it might not be everything that you want it to be. So you might flow out again, and that's okay as well. So what we're talking about is just getting happiness along our life's journey by evolving and really turning inward to see what we want as a human being, as an individual person.
And I think that's absolutely beautiful what you've just described there, Tracey. And I want to encourage our listeners to try new things, because from a brain perspective, what begins to happen is when you try something new, you begin to recruit new parts of the brain, you make new neural associations, and it's a novel experience. You get out of that life is mundane, routine. You know, routine is very important for lots of things. We won't go into it, but you start creating a new experience in your brain. And when the brain begins to kind of pay attention with that new experience, it secretes a whole bunch of new chemicals that make you feel more alert, more connected, more present. It's sort of like if you drive the same way home all the time, you're not really thinking, you're on autopilot. If you go somewhere new, you're paying more attention, you're more alert, you're taking in signs. So I'm going to encourage people to try things that maybe are out of their comfort zone. And this will put you in a situation where you are challenging yourself a little bit more. And when you walk away from a situation like that, even if you quote unquote failed, right, at that situation, you still walk away with an experience under your belt. If I go to the beach and I try and start swimming in the middle of winter and I'm absolutely freezing and I don't manage to go past my knees and I go home, I still tried it, right?
Yeah, totally. That's 100% a big win in itself.
Totally.
You've got up, you've made the effort, you've driven yourself to the beach. Okay, you've gone up to your knees, you haven't gone all the way in, but you got there. And then that's a huge achievement,
Absolutely.
right? So the next day you go up to your hips and you just continue that pattern until you're all the way in there. I think that's the perfect way to start doing something like that. But I would say do it now before it gets too cold. Because it's getting really cold down there, right? It's
it was so cold
freezing.
this morning, but I loved it. Something magical happens. I don't know, minute number 3, you were acclimatized and you're like, oh, suddenly it's warm.
Yeah, totally.
Or I'm going insane.
So I think we've pretty much covered that. I think there's not really a right or wrong answer to are we supposed to be happy all the time. I think it's about everybody just looking inward and going, assessing themselves and going, am I happy? Yeah, I am pretty happy. Or, I don't know, I guess I could change things in this area, and what that would look like. So, and how you can start implementing a little bit of change and working towards something that you might like to achieve down the track. Is there anything else you want to add?
My take-home message for our listeners is create your days with intention.
I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So we're going to head off and we'll speak to you next time.
Thanks for listening.
The information, views and opinions expressed on this podcast should not be used or treated as a substitute for nutritional, medical, psychological or other advice by a qualified health professional. Hosts and guests on the podcast express their own opinions, experiences and conclusions. Nothing in the podcast should be used to diagnose, treat, cure or prevent any medical condition. The podcast is not intended to replace any medical or mental health treatment. All information and advice provided is for general well-being and does not take individual cases into consideration. Neither Tracey Soltys, Kali Alfaro, or any sponsor endorse the opinions, views or conclusions expressed or shared on the podcast. Tracey Soltys and Kali Alfaro take no responsibility for any symptoms or consequences as a direct or indirect result of the podcast.